are studying in this class the idea of how to deal with worry, anxiety, difficulties in life. Anybody have a life with no difficulties? I didn't think so. Maddox does. Yeah, Maddox got it made, man. Somebody else makes his living. Somebody makes his living for him and pays his bills and feeds him. And there you go. Any grown-ups have lives without problems? No. It is our custom to have a prayer for the sick to begin our class. I saw yesterday was visiting day, and we saw Edna Pendleton, and she is remarkably upbeat to have stage 4 lung cancer. I mean, she's short of breath, of course, but her voice was strong, and we had a good talk and a good visit with her. We visited with... I can't imagine you not being able to hear me. Can you hear me now? Turn it up, Brad. Brad is gone. They say they can't hear me. That's going to really look good on live feed. You can hear me now, right? Is that too loud? Too loud? I don't know how to suit all of y'all people. Down just a little bit, Jamie. All right. Take it or leave it. Edna Pendleton, I was talking about her. She's doing really not well. She has stage 4 lung cancer, but her voice was strong, and we had a really good visit with her. And her attitude is just remarkable. And so we had a good visit with her. I saw Catherine Gilvin. She had hip surgery yesterday. She fell and broke her hip over the weekend and had hip surgery yesterday. I saw her yesterday and this morning, and she's doing very well considering. Arthur Johnson is in the hospital across the hall from Catherine, and he has had 4 hours of tests today trying to figure out something going on in his stomach. And not sure what it is. Of course, Arthur has leukemia, and he is on kidney dialysis, and so not sure if the stomach thing is part of that, but they did a 2-hour test this morning and a 2-hour test this afternoon. We saw Frances Moore yesterday, Dan and I did, and again, another good upbeat visit. She can cross her legs now, and those of you who knew the shape she was in before, that is a major accomplishment for her swelling to be down to where she can cross her legs. And she got up in her car, and her brother took her for a drive, and she said, I finally got out of the house, and I said, where did you go? And she said, CVS. And so even a trip to the drugstore was a treat for her. Who else do we need to mention? Who'd we miss? Tom?
Billy's had the surgery in the morning.
In the morning, Billy's procedure. We've been talking about it for quite some time, and finally coming up. And so
They should be traveling Saturday. Also, our great-granddaughter can't hear out one ear, and the other one is they're running all kinds of tests on to see what they're adding doing.
So Tommy and Billy will be having surgery tomorrow. Alicia will be traveling Saturday, and Tommy and Billy's great-granddaughter is having trouble with her hearing. And so keep all of those in your prayers. Who else? Oh, Judy.
As you know, Drew went yesterday to get his mark for his radiation. He did not get anything accomplished yesterday. The radiation doctor will not do anything. He said, I cannot do that until we get another biopsy.
Well,
So they're in the process now of going to go down and maybe do the throat and do a biopsy, but they're having to set all that up. So it's very frustrating.
Gerald Vinson went yesterday thinking he was going to have radiation, and they didn't do anything because they decided they had to have another biopsy. Gerald has just been given one letdown after another, and so they have to now think maybe go down the throat to get the biopsy, is what Judy said, right? And so keep Gerald and Betty in your prayers. Who else? Marty? The 16-year-old has the lung cancer? Bone cancer. Trevor, an acquaintance of Marty's near Cincinnati, has bone cancer and has to have 30 treatments. Wow. So there's a lot of hurting going on in the world. Kenny, since you're back, would you lead us in a prayer, please?
Heavenly Father, we're thankful we have another opportunity to be together this evening and we can spend time in Scripture. Father, we just heard many people that have been mentioned among our friends, our family, our acquaintances. Father, we also are aware of many more in our day-to-day lives that are hurting as well. Father, we know that sin has many consequences in this world that brings about much misery. And Father, we just pray that you would intervene, you would help these individuals, and we're just so thankful for the caretakers who we have available to help ease the pain, that can also help lift spirits, but help us to understand our role and responsibility to serve our fellow man. Father, we just thank you for the blessings of life that you give us, for the measure of health that we do have, for all the things, the food, the shelter, the clothing, the camaraderie that we have among other Christians. And we're especially thankful for the sacrifice of Christ, the very hope that we have to be able to be rejoined with you. We thank you for loving us. Father, as we're here this evening, we pray to you with each of the teachers as they prepare lessons for us. May they sink into our minds and may they motivate us to want to grow more like Christ. So we want to be more dedicated to go out to help those that are in need, more dedicated to serve. Father, once again, thank you for loving us. Father, may we be here together and may be profitable for each of us being here this evening. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Kenny. Alexander's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I don't know how many of you have read that children's book published in 1972. It was a favorite of our children and grandchildren when they were growing up. And it begins like this. I went to sleep with gum in my mouth, and now there's gum in my hair. And when I got out of bed this morning, I tripped on the skateboard, and by mistake, I dropped my sweater in the sink while the water was running, and I could tell. It was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. You ever had one of those? People have them, don't we? And what we want to talk about this evening is how you keep going. How do you handle these things? And far more serious than this. But I want to tell you about a lady. I don't do a lot of these long, drawn-out personal stories, but I met a lady when I moved to Nashville to preach who had moved there from New York. She had married, had a son, was pregnant with another child, and her husband abandoned her. He left. She had, right after that, a car wreck that crippled her for life, and she lost the baby she was carrying. She moved to Nashville to work from another state, and got a job, met and married another man, a good man. And they had a son. So she had her son from her first marriage, and now they had another son. Her first son, when he was 16, was riding a bicycle and was run over by a car and nearly killed. He was in a coma for weeks and did permanent damage to his body, had a serious head injury, plagued him, it plagues and continues to plague him for the rest of his life. So we have this severely crippled woman who has lost one husband to abandonment. She marries again, has another son. Her first son is horribly injured in a car accident. And then her new husband, on his way to work, had a car wreck and died. And a few years later, her second son was in a car accident, and he's been paralyzed from about here down ever since. That was in 1999. How do you keep going? You talking about a horrible, terrible, very bad day. This lady has had a horrible, terrible, very bad life. Year after year after year. Day after day. We all have bad moments, and something is said or done to discourage and depress or disgust us, but these things usually pass quickly, and we bounce right back to our normal selves. Hopefully, our usual optimistic selves. Christians of all people ought to be the most optimistic, but that's tough when you have one thing after another happen like this. These things usually pass quickly, but what's the Christian to do when the whole day seems wrong? Or the whole week, or the whole month, or the whole year? Or just one thing after another on the heels of one another? As Bible believers, we believe Romans 8:28, don't we? We believe that all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and those who are called according to His purpose. Now, that does not say only good things will happen to those who love the Lord and those who are called according to His purpose. It does say that somewhere an end result will be good. There will be good come out of these things. Raise your hand if you've ever seen good come out of a tragedy in your own life. Yeah, it does. It happens. Good things come out of tragedies. My favorite definition of life, and mark this down. I heard this when I was a young preaching student. My favorite definition of life is periods of peace between crises. That's life on earth. Periods of peace between crises. Now, you may have lived 30 years in the peace. Wallow in it, relish it, enjoy it, because I guarantee you the crisis is coming. I promise you there's going to be one. It may not, I don't know what it'll be or to what degree it will be, but it'll be there. What about the situations where things keep on going and the good never seems to be obvious? What do we do then? What if Alexander's no good, horrible, very bad day turns into Alexander's no good, horrible, very bad life with no hope of recovery? What do you do then? That's what the lesson's going to be about this evening. And so, first of all, the first thing you do when all these things seem to be piling in on you is keep your faith intact. One of the most horrible, crazy, ridiculous things you can do. Is that enough adjectives? One of the worst things you can do is when these things start piling in on you, blame God and turn your back on Him. Don't do that. Job chapter 1 and verse 22, you remember what happened to Job? Do I need to go over it? He lost his whole family and everything he had, and his wife encouraged him to curse God and die. He lost everything, and the Bible says, in all this, Job did not sin nor charge God with wrong, but he did yell at God, didn't he? You ever read that? I demand to know why this is happening to me. What did I ever do? What did I ever do to deserve this? But the Bible says that wasn't a sin. He didn't sin with his lips. He just did what you and I would do. Okay? What do I need to do to fix this? And then his three friends come along and they say, well, Job, you know, everybody knows that punishment like what you're going through is punishment for sin, and in proportion to the degree that you have sinned. In other words, for you to lose everything you had, you must have really pulled a big one. You must have really done something horrible. Job said, tell me what it is and I'll repent. Tell me what it is. What did I do? He didn't do anything. And you and I have the whole book. I feel sorry for Job because he couldn't read his own book. It wasn't written yet. But you and I have the whole book. We know what happened, don't we? He was faithful. And God knew he would be. So keep your faith intact. Job yelled at God. Joshua and Moses expressed the desire to give up. And even Jesus prayed, Lord, if there's a plan B, let's do that. You remember in the garden? Even Jesus asked about a plan B for redeeming mankind. But the one thing all of these Bible greats had in common was an uncommon faith in God to always do the right thing and the best thing where His people are concerned. So number one, things are crashing in on you. Number one, you're not unique. Things crash in on everybody at one time or another, to some degree. Keep your faith intact. Don't lose your faith. It could be that you may be in the situation that Job was in. His faith is all he had left. He didn't have any friends. His wife had turned on him. His kids were all dead. His donkeys and camels were all gone. His health was gone. What did he have left? He had his faith. One of my favorite John Denver songs is a song called Uncle Matthew. And it's about this guy that had a farm and a family. And a tornado comes and just wipes him clean. Just kills all of his family, wipes out his house and his crops and everything. But there's a line in that song that says, the one thing he found out of all that was the family Bible, and his faith was solid as a stone. Well, yeah, that makes sense to me. Does that make sense to you? Hang on to your faith, because that's the only thing sometimes you have left. The second thing we need to do, don't give up too easily. Turn to Jeremiah chapter 12 and verse 5 in your Bible, verse 1 through 5. I love this passage, and I love old Jeremiah. Jeremiah was known as the negative or weeping, crying prophet. Jeremiah was forbidden to marry, which may or may not have been a good thing in his case. But God said, you don't have time for a wife. I want you to go preach to these people. What do you want me to tell them? I want you to preach a message of gloom and doom. If they don't turn, the country's going to be destroyed. And God said, go do that. And when Jeremiah did it, guess what they did? His relatives plotted to kill him. They threw him in a cistern where the water was gone, but the mud was still there. And they did all kinds of things to persecute him. And Jeremiah complained to God. Start with chapter 12 of Jeremiah, verse 1. Righteous are you, O Lord, when I plead with you, yet let me talk with you about your judgments. Why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why are those happy who deal so treacherously? You have planted them, yes, they have taken root. They grow, yes, they bear fruit. You are near in their mouth, but far from their mind. You see his dilemma? You see his problem? I'm righteous, and all these horrible things are happening to me, and the wicked people are doing great. Explain that to me, God. But you, O Lord, know me. You've seen me, and you've tested my heart toward you. Pull them out like sheep for the slaughter, and prepare them for the day of slaughter. How long will the land mourn, and the herbs of every field wither? And the beasts and birds are consumed for the wickedness of those who dwell there. Because they said, he will not see our final end. And God answers him. Here's God's answer to him. You got his question, right? Why are the wicked doing so well and I'm not doing so great? And I am righteous. You can see my heart. You know I'm right. Look at verse 5. If you've run with the footmen and they wore you out, how can you contend with the horses? Don't you love it? These are foot soldier problems, Jeremiah. If foot soldier problems are wearing you out, what are you going to do when the horses come? How are you going to run with them? You and I get discouraged over foot soldier problems. And if we do that, if we let that put our light out, and if we let those things discourage us, what are we going to do when the horses come along? And my little sister, my sister Barbara, we had an old blue roan horse, a grayish, bluish colored horse. And she was so gentle that Randy and Keith and I would ride on her back, and Barbara would hold her tail and run along behind her. That's how Barbara trained. She could outrun all the boys at school. And the way she did it was that when we get home at night, she'd run along behind that old blue horse. Well, I wonder if you could do that now. I guarantee you I couldn't. Because I haven't done that in a long, long time. Foot soldier problems. What's Jeremiah's big problem? His big thing that's about to destroy him. Wicked people seem to have it made, God. How do you explain that? Jeremiah, that's a foot soldier problem. If that's got you all bent out of shape, what are you going to do when the horse comes along? The answer to that is they'll get theirs. They'll get theirs. You just stay faithful. You just keep doing what you're doing. Don't give up so easily. If the foot soldier problems of life weary us, What's to be expected of us when the real horse-sized problems come along? If you're worried about somebody down the road having a better car than you, what's going to happen when you hear the C word after your next doctor visit? Those two problems aren't even in the same ballpark, are they? And so, don't give up too easily. Live one day at a time. I know you hear this all the time, and I know now you're going to be thinking of Christy Lane's song all night long. That's going to be in your mind. Well, that's not a bad song. One day at a time, sweet Jesus. That's all I'm asking from you. Matthew 6 and verse 34, Jesus said, sufficient for today is the trouble thereof. Let today's own trouble be sufficient for the day. Did you have enough problems to solve today to suit you? Would you like to have yesterday's and tomorrow's added to them? No. That's how you handle these horrible, no good, very bad days. Handle them today. Let today's problem be sufficient for today. You know how I know that's true? Jesus said it. Jesus never said an untrue thing in his life. And he said, you got enough problems for today. Another thing is count your blessings. And I could say, count your blessings, not your problems. James 1 and verse 17, every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father of lights, in whom there is no shadow or variance of turning, no variation. He's going to always be the same, and he's going to always give you, what's it say? What's that verse say? What kind of things is God going to give you? Good things. Perfect things. Well, where do the ugly things come from? Kenny mentioned it in his prayer. We live in the sin-cursed version of the perfect creation. And in the sin-cursed version, bad things happen to good people. They just do. But the good things come from God. The good and perfect things. Now, that's not to say, Hebrews chapter 12 teaches that God uses these things that happen to us to discipline us sometimes and to bring us into subjection. God can use those things, but does he make them happen? I don't think so. I think they're going to happen because we live in a sinful world, which makes more sense to me. Because James said good and perfect gifts come from God. You remember Psalm 23 and verse 5? You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Those are good gifts, aren't they? You lead me beside still waters. You give me plenty of pasture. You take care of me. You do all those good things for me. Those are good things. And so count your blessings. Romans 8 and verse 18, Paul said, I consider the sufferings of this life, this present time, are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. Romans 8:18. By dwelling on our few problems, it's easy to forget your blessings. I was talking with my grandchildren, with Harrison and Rhiannon and Ariel, the other night, Friday night, or Saturday morning. We had awoken, and Harrison said, or Rhiannon said she had a bad dream. One of them said had a bad dream and couldn't go to sleep. And they said, Granddad, what do you do when you have bad thoughts and it troubles your sleep? And I said, well, I count my blessings. And Rhiannon piped up and said, I bet that took you all night to count your blessings. Well, yeah, it does. You finally fall asleep counting all the good things that God has done for you. And so think of those things. Think of good things. When you have trouble sleeping, think happy thoughts, good thoughts. There are so many out there. Yeah, we live in a crazy world, and the country's going nuts, and you could just drive yourself crazy with all of that. Politics, there are people for whom politics have become a religion in our country, and that'll drive you nuts. I'm not saying don't be interested in what's going on in the country. I'm just saying don't go overboard with all that stuff. Think about good things. I'll share one personal thing with you. Last night, I was having trouble going to sleep, and so I started going over in my mind every place I'd ever preached. Not where I had been the preacher, but all the places where I'd done gospel meetings. I didn't get a tenth of them. I can't remember them all because it's been over 30 years, and I've averaged from 5 to 8 meetings a year. And I don't remember where all those places were. And sometimes when you preach in a place like this, you go out to area congregations and preach, so you got to add all them. But you know what? I didn't get through them, but I went to sleep. It works. Count your blessings, not your problems. Now, you want to talk? I know you can talk. Anybody?
You know, you can pray, when you can't sleep, you can pray for, start with anybody
Yeah.
and just continue on, pray individually.
Until you fall asleep. Sherry, if you didn't hear her, said when you can't sleep, start praying. Pray for anybody, individuals. And I do that a lot too. And you'll fall asleep before you get through all of them, everybody that needs your prayers. And I suggest this too, and this is just a personal suggestion. I keep a list beside my bed. It's not an exhaustive list. Obviously, there are people that ought to be on there that aren't, that I don't remember, but I keep a little notebook with a list on there in my Bible by my bed, and I pull that out and go down those names every night. And so that's a good idea, an excellent idea. What else?
Jerry, I think about it sticks in my mind always where Betty Collins went to Africa and those little kids eat water and flour mixed, and they was happy to have it. They
Yeah.
looked forward to having that.
Yeah.
And then you look at what we've got. Now, I mean, I'm mad if I miss a meal a day.
Yeah, me too.
I think I'm gonna starve to death. But these kids are tickled to death with one meal a day, and
Of something that we probably wouldn't even like.
never eat,
Yeah.
think about eating.
Yeah.
And I think if we're so spoiled, and here in this country seems like that
We are. We
take it
are.
for granted.
We do. Mike said that he was talking about when Betty went to Africa and that little kids were happy to have flour and water for a meal once a day, and how we take our things for granted. Donnie, do you have a comment?
I tell one of my grandsons, he procrastinates when he comes to work, and I told him, I said, hot water gravy. If you got to feed your children hot water gravy, you learn to work and to, but in sleeping, if I can't sleep, I'll read the Bible. I'll get up and read the Bible, sit in the chair, cover up, and shortly thereafter I will go to sleep.
Those are all good things. Reading the Bible and praying, going over in your mind what God has done for you, your blessings, all those things. Any of those things are more positive than thinking about horrible things and worrying about whether or not the wicked are prospering like Jeremiah was. Don't worry about that. That'll be taken care of. Try to be optimistic. Romans 8 and verse, that whole passage there from 31 on, we won't read it all, but that's that place where it talks about nothing can separate you from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus. Beginning with verse 31, what then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? And then when you start in verse 37, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us, for I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing shall be able to separate us from the love of God which is in Christ Jesus. And so have an optimistic outlook. Try to be positive as you possibly can. Dan and I were talking about sermons the other day, and you can write a negative sermon or a positive sermon on the same subject. I wrote a sermon one time called When Churches Die. That was the name of it. And what it consisted of were problems that would kill churches. And I never preached that sermon. I started looking at it and I thought, I can turn that around and say when churches live, and each one of these things that kills a church, I'll just say, if you do these things, if you do the opposite of this, the church will live. And so you can make something positive if you want to. You can put a positive outlook, not just a lying, twisting spin, but an actual, realistic, positive thing on about anything. You can do that. And so be optimistic. Fall in love with life. Do you like living for God? Do you like it? think about the alternative when you were lost in sin and when you when Satan was the boss and calling the shots. 1 Peter chapter 3, and we'll spend a lot of time there in the rest of this lesson, but 1 Peter chapter 3, he who would love life and see good days. Everybody want to love life and see good days? Anybody want to hate life and see bad days? I didn't think so. Anybody that wants to love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil, his lips from speaking deceit. Turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it, for the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayers, but the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. Now that's Peter quoting from Psalm 34 and verse 12 and following, of course. And so the Old Testament had that same thing in it, and Peter carried it over into the New. You want to love life and see good days, then these are things that you need to do. Fall in love with life. Appreciate life. A.T. Pate taught me a lot of things. He was a mentor of mine, and I led singing for him in a lot of meetings when I lived in Nashville. We swapped pulpits down there, and we hung out together a lot. And A.T. had a practice. Every morning when he got up, he said, and I'll do my best A.T. Pate for you. He said, "This is a day the Lord hath made. I will rejoice and be glad in it." That's my A.T. Pate imitation. You can take that 74 cents and get you a cup of coffee. Anyway, every morning when A.T. Pate got up, he would say that. He would look out the window and say that. And he had taught me that. And so I try to do that. I miss a day or two every now and then when I wake up and have to, it takes me a long time to kind of get focused and all that. I forget that phrase every now and then, but not too often. So love life. Fall in love with life and living. Decide to be optimistic. And another thing, fill your life with good things, good thoughts, and good things. I have been required to go to some places over the years as a preacher that I thought, Lord, I hope you don't come back while I'm in here. You know, you ever been involved in something you thought, just get me out of here and help me to get clean. I want to take a shower as soon as I get out of this place. Try to surround yourself with good things. Good thoughts, Philippians 4 and verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there's any virtue, if there's anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. Fill your heart and your mind with those things. And your life, fill your life with good things as opposed to evil things. Now, I'm going to stomp on one of your sacred cows here for a minute. You know that old box that's sitting in your living room, and you don't even have to get up to turn it on. You can sit in your recliner and click it. That thing's got some ugly stuff on it. It's got some really ugly, negative things on it. And I suggest strongly that you don't stop on those things. I drive Gene crazy clicking through things, but that's all right. If you drive your wife nuts, that's okay if you're clicking through nasty things and ugly things. Get past those things. We've gotten so old. I didn't think we'd ever be at this point, but all we ever watch is Gunsmoke and Andy Griffith now, and that's pretty much it. I mean, every now and then something else. We do watch Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. We do watch those. And so, I mean, we're really old in our taste in TV, but fill your life with good things. Prioritize. Learn to keep your priorities straight. Jesus said in Matthew 6 and verse 17, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys or thieves break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart is also." Verse 33, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you." Chapter 22 and verse 37, Jesus said, You shall love, when he was asked, what's the number one commandment? You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is like unto it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Those are good things. Those are priorities. Put those things above the other things that aren't as important. Learn to prioritize. You want to talk some more? We've got plenty of time. Okay. Well, be a giver instead of a getter. You want to handle these horrible, no good, very bad days. You want to love life and see good days. You want to be able to rise above the fray, if you will. Acts 20 and verse 35, the Apostle Paul is quoting Jesus. Interesting thing about that is we don't have any record of Jesus ever saying that except where the Apostle Paul said he did. And that is, it's more blessed to give than to receive. Galatians 6 and verse 10, as you therefore have opportunity. I can't afford it, preacher. Well, you don't have opportunity then. I can't go there. Well, you don't have opportunity then. As the opportunities present themselves in your lives, and they do good. Well, that's not a hard command, is it? As you therefore have opportunity, do good to whom? To everyone, especially those of the household of faith. You know, we could solve a whole lot of problems about sitting around saying, woe is me, and I do it, I've done it. I don't do it as much, but I've done it. Sitting around saying, woe is me, everybody hates me, and all that kind of stuff. Go eat a worm or whatever. We could solve a whole lot of those problems by saying, you know what, I'm not going to think about that. I'm going to get up and go see Brother so-and-so. He may need help in something. I'm going to do good to somebody in my neighborhood, in my community, in my town, in my church, the church to which I belong. I'm going to help somebody. But then you hear the devil in your back of your mind saying, oh, they're all just take advantage of you. They'll just take advantage of you. Once you do something good for them, man, you're going to have to show up every Monday and do that every time, just exactly like that. Be like Jesus told Peter, get behind me, Satan. Get behind me, Satan. I'm going to think positively. I'm going to be a giver instead of a getter. I tell you, would that solve some problems in our country if we had that attitude? Instead of sitting around waiting on working people to feed us and take care of us, when we could be doing it ourselves, you can have that for free.
The Lord told him that she anointed him with that spikenard. And they said, we could sell this and give it to the poor.
Yeah.
And he told him, said, Lord, she's preparing me for my death. But he also said, the poor is with you always. Now, if you're looking for something to do, all you got to do is step outside your house and look. There'll be somebody pass that needs help.
That's right.
I mean, the poor is with you always. He told us that.
And Donnie mentioned something we do need to remember. You need to look for opportunities to help. Don't just stand around and wait on them to come. Look for them, because the people that really need the help, a lot of them won't ask. They won't ask. Kenny?
When you say you want to be a giver, it's a simple. If you're at the barber shop, when you're paying for your haircut, you say, I'd like to pay for the next guy that walks in that door. I don't know who
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
It's simple as that.
It's simple.
And you put yourself in that person's shoes. You walk in, you say, I want to pay for my haircut. He says, it's already coming.
Yeah. We've a couple of times over the years.
It sticks with you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That makes you want to do something for the next person.
I can tell you, probably 10 years ago, I pulled up to the window at McDonald's in Dry Ridge, and I said, how much is it? And she said, that woman in front of you paid for it. And I said, well, I don't even know that woman. She said, well, she paid for your meal. And so I said, how much is the one behind me? And she told me, so I paid for theirs because I was going to pay for mine anyway. Well, that's good. That didn't hurt anything. Do good. Just pay it forward, as they say. And develop a sense of humor. If you're going to get through this life, I think you're going to have to laugh. And especially at yourself. Especially be able to say, well, yeah, you're right. You're right. That was a boneheaded move on my part. That was really dumb. Proverbs 17 and verse 22, a merry heart does good like medicine, but a broken spirit dries up the bones. Sometimes we take ourselves way too seriously, don't we? Sometimes we let people or things get under our skin too easily. A fellow said something to me up at Dry Ridge one time, and I just grinned and walked off, and he said, that didn't bother you a bit? And I said, I've been a preacher for over 30 years. I got skin like a turtle. And no, it didn't bother me. It'll toughen you up. Life will toughen you up. And that's not a bad thing. Don't let things get under your skin so easily. Trust in God and fear nothing or no one. John 4 and verse 18, perfect love casteth out fear. You and I don't have to walk through this world as timid Christians, worried about everything and scared about every shadow that comes around. We have God on our side. Does that mean He won't ever allow anything bad to happen to us? He won't ever allow us to get robbed or mugged? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that you can go through this life with confidence. You can go through this life trusting in the Lord and leaning not on your own understanding. Proverbs 3 and verse 5. That's the Christian's trust fund. You didn't know your parents or whoever taught you Christianity left you a trust fund, did you? Well, they did. Trust in the Lord with all His might and lean not on your own understanding. Trust in the Lord. Psalm 37 and verse 3 as we close. Trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and feed on His fullness, or His faithfulness. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and He shall give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord, trust also in Him, and He shall bring it to pass. He shall bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wicked schemes to pass. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret, it only causes harm. That's Psalm 37, verse 3 through 8. So, I hope and I pray that whatever's going on in your no good, terrible, horrible, very bad day, I hope it gets better soon. I pray that it gets better soon. I hope we've shared some practical things with you that'll help it get better soon. Thank you.